What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 40 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Wednesday, January 15th, 2024. I'm your host, Zach Malama. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NBA as the New York Knicks are looking to get back on track. It feels like for the first time this season, Knicks have won just 2 of their last 7 games, dropped a couple to OKC. Can't really think too much into those two. OKC, my favorite to win it all this season. They've been so strong without Chet Holmgren and continue to roll in the Western Conference. But you're looking at the other losses for the Knicks. They drop another game to the Chicago Bulls. Second time this season they've lost to the Bulls, 1 at home, 1 on the road. They drop a game to Orlando, 103-94 on January 6th, where you look at Orlando and say, all right, well, they've been without Franz Wagner as well as Paolo Banchero for a good portion of the times that the Knicks have played the Magic, and they've really beaten up on the Magic this season. Finally, the Magic get one on the New York Knicks, and really at the right time. The 2 wins come against Toronto as well as Milwaukee. Both solid wins in the end, but Toronto, you should beat them. Milwaukee has been middle of the pack so far this year. And then really this last loss to Detroit on Monday night, a 124-119 loss to the Pistons at MSG, really explains what the Knicks really need in the end and are looking for this season. I think they just need more depth. I think they need to get another guy off the bench, a guy who comes in behind a Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby. It's just not enough right now. They're relying on guys like Campaign as well as Deuce McBride. Campaign, a good veteran point guard off the bench. That's fine. Deuce McBride comes in, gets a bit of scoring off the bench for the Knicks. And then you got Precious Achiuwa down low who comes in off the bench. They're still waiting month after month for Mitchell Robinson to come back, and the timeline for his return continues to get pushed back. Hopefully they'll get him back towards the end of this month, but they really can't go much longer without that second big down low. They have Precious Achiuwa, and he's been solid off the bench, but a guy like Mitchell Robinson, especially if Karl Anthony Towns needs to miss a game here or there, they need to have that strong big man down low, and that is Mitchell Robinson when he is healthy. But they really need to hope and pray that he comes back pretty soon. But right now, they need the another guy, like I said, behind Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, a guy that can really take some of the pressure and some of the relief off of those guys who continue to play big minutes each and every game, near 40-plus minutes every single night, and you can't really expect those guys to continue to go on that track and continue to win games. And it's been proven in this stretch. They really need that one more depth piece, maybe a veteran presence that comes in, or even a guy that just adds some scoring off the bench. The Knicks just don't get enough scoring off the bench this season, and I think that's been a problem for them. Detroit really dominated them when it came to bench points the other night. So, and most teams do so far this season. But that 124-119 loss on Monday night, I think it comes down to the three-point shooting of Detroit. They made the same amount of threes, the Knicks and the Pistons, but clutch threes, and the Knicks, when they don't defend the three, it's a long day for them every single time, and they really struggled to contain this Detroit Pistons offense from beyond the arc. So that's something that they really need to focus on as well in the next couple of games, just defense and getting back. And obviously that's been a struggle for the Knicks so far in this 7-game stretch. But when you look at tonight's game, they need to bounce back in a hurry. They go to Philadelphia, who has been struggling mightily so far this season. The Sixers are 15-23 on the season, 6-12 on their home floor. The Knicks are 26-15 on the year now, and they come into tonight's matchup, 7 o'clock on ESPN. The Knicks are 6.5-point favorites, total sitting at 219.5 in Philadelphia. And the Sixers looking to stop a 3-game skid. Knicks looking to stop this 2-game or this stretch where they've really struggled. Obviously, just 2 wins in the last 7 games, like I mentioned. So they really need to bounce back. But New York taking on Philly, a game that you really expect the Knicks to win, but they got some game-time decisions here. Jericho Sims, Jalen Brunson, as well as Karl Anthony Towns, all game-time decisions for this one. On the other side for Philly, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Andre Drummond as well are all game time decisions. Joel Embiid will play in this one, so how are they going to stop him? That's going to be the key for the New York Knicks, especially if some of those other guys for Philadelphia don't play tonight in Maxey and George. So we'll see what happens, but tune in later, 7 o'clock tonight. The Knicks 6.5-point favorites on the road in Philadelphia, trying to stop this slump of games as they sit at 26-15 in the middle of the pack of the Eastern Conference. Just quick updates in the MLB as well as the NFL. As for the MLB, the San Diego Padres, the Los Angeles Dodgers, as well as the Toronto Blue Jays are the finalists for Japanese right-hander Roki Sasaki. Plans to sign with one of those three teams, and you pointed to those two teams in Los Angeles as well as San Diego as the two favorites from the beginning. Obviously, that's really confirmed right now. Toronto, an interesting destination that he's added to the group of teams, maybe just out of the country into Canada, maybe different scenarios of living for Roki Sasaki, and maybe he's into that sort of thing. So that's really what I'm looking for in that Toronto deal, and really doesn't really come down to money. I feel like just out of the country is maybe a different scenario for him, and that's maybe something he's interested in. But when you look at the Dodgers and the Padres, I think they're clearly the two favorites, and obviously on the West Coast, those two teams need to figure stuff out when it comes to pitching. Padres have a great pitching staff right now. Dodgers looking to pick up the pieces here and there, lost out on Walker Buehler, but they're getting Shohei Ohtani back as a pitcher, and obviously some of the depth behind him in Yamamoto. They're maybe going back and forth between bringing back Jack Flaherty, so we'll see what happens there. But I think when you look at Roki Sasaki and the talented pitcher that he is, I think he's going to end up at one of the Dodgers or the Padres. I would be pretty shocked if he ended up in Canada with the Toronto Blue Jays, but you never know. Obviously, they had a good pitch to him, and he really liked it, and obviously they're one of the favorites right now. But the New York Yankees, New York Mets, both out officially on Roki Sasaki. I feel like the Mets needed him a lot more than the Yankees did. Yankees almost have a full pitching staff right now, and even with the trade of Nestor Cortez to Milwaukee, they still have 6 starters that they could really rely on. Still figuring out what they could do with a guy like Marcus Stroman. But even with Stroman, 5 more really strong starters ahead of them. So they're pretty fine when it comes to starting pitching. Mets maybe could add one more piece here or there, but that's about it. And I feel like Roki Sasaki, would have been a big piece for the Mets to really take their pitching staff to the next level. Obviously, they have Sean Manaea back from last season, and really gave him that big contract, 3 years, $75 million, which that's a big deal for the Mets, and a guy that they feel like they can rely on as their number one, as their ace this season. So it should be interesting. We'll keep track of who gets Roki Sasaki. Obviously the Dodgers, the Padres, as well as the Blue Jays, all involved. We'll see what happens with the Japanese right-hander and where he ends up. As for football news in the NFL, just the New York Jets making a little bit of noise as they finish up their first round of GM interviews. Finalists are next. They continue to request interviews for head coaches. After they get through round 1, they'll end up going towards the finalists and figuring something out in terms of the second round of interviews. I'm looking at 2 guys. I mentioned it on Monday's episode, Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn. Either one the Jets like. It could be a little bit more difficult to get a guy like Aaron Glenn, with New Orleans really interested in him. Yes, New Orleans also interested in a guy like Mike McCarthy, who got let go by the Cowboys. I think when you look at the Jets, though, they just need a defensive mind. If they get a defensive mind, I'm happy. Offensive mind, not helping them right now. They don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. And if they continue to roll with how bad their defense played last year, I think they're going to be in trouble. So get the defense back to where it was and get that defensive mind in there. And it should be interesting if they get one of those 2 guys, who they end up picking as their offensive coordinator and who they picked to run their offense. We'll see what happens with that. But second round of interviews coming up soon in terms of the Jets head coaching jobs. And obviously the GM job has really stepped up in the interviews have. And finalists are now looking to talk to the Jets, and second round of interviews coming up. So we'll keep track of that in the next couple of days. We'll see what happens as the New York Jets look for a general manager as well as a head coach for next season in the NFL. Let's finish things off today in the world of college basketball. Very busy night last night, Tuesday, January 14th, where a lot of teams played, a lot of ranked teams played, and let's just look through quickly some of the scores. Duke was tremendous against Miami, but Miami not a strong team so far this season, an 89-54 Duke victory at Cameron. But looking at the SEC games, and specifically those ranked games, Auburn takes down Mississippi State 88-66 at home. Just business as usual, and proves that Auburn's the number one team in the country still. But the big loss, I feel like, was Missouri taking down Florida. Florida number 5 on the season, and they go down to Missouri. Missouri played very strong throughout this game, especially in the first half. 50-34, they led this game at halftime, but Caleb Grill was the story in the end, and Florida just could not figure things out on defense. That's something that I think that's just the one worrying sign for the Gators so far this season has been their defense. You're talking about a team that gave up 106 to Kentucky at Rupp Arena just a couple of weeks ago. That was their other loss on the season. So then you look at this one now, and a Missouri loss in the Swamp. I think when you look at that, it's a bit of a worrying sign for Florida when it comes to their defense, something that they'll need to pick up towards the later parts of this season, especially now in this next stretch where they're going to face a lot of ranked SEC teams. But Missouri, I don't know how they weren't ranked before this. They should be ranked officially now. They've also taken down Kansas so far this season. So 2 top 10 wins for Missouri. They've been really strong so far this season. And when you look at the other game, Alabama goes down, taking on Ole Miss, and Ole Miss held Alabama to just 64 points in Tuscaloosa. That's got to be almost a new record when it comes to teams that they face off against. Nate Oates and how high-powered his offense usually is. Only 64 points at home is a real shocker there, and credit to Chris Beard and this Ole Miss team that grab a huge top 5 win on the road and take down Alabama. Last couple of games, it was Kentucky taking down Texas A&M at Rupp Arena. Texas A&M a bit sputtering out of control, but they add 4 losses now on the season, still sitting at 13-4, 2-2, and SEC play. But it just kind of proves that there's that top caliber kind of teams, and then Texas A&M's just a bit of a level below them. The final game I'll talk about is the upset, and not really too much of an upset. Arizona continues to roll, undefeated, 5-0 in Big 12 play this season, an 81-70 victory over number 25 Baylor yesterday, where they held Baylor to just 19 points in the first half. It was 42-19, a 23-point lead at halftime for the Wildcats of Arizona, and they continue to roll in Big 12 play. I feel like more so when you look at Arizona, it's the ability to, on their home floor, just make it a tough place to play. And we know there's some really tough places to play, even under the radar, tough places to play in the Big 12. Obviously, the main ones, you got your Allen Fieldhouse of the world and even your Hilton Coliseum. But then you look at the other teams there, and really down in Lubbock is a tough place to play. Is down in Waco is a tough place to play. So finally, Arizona has been added to that group and making their place in Tucson a tough place to play. And they take down Baylor 81-70 yesterday and really advanced themselves, I think, closer to a ranking towards the bottom of the rankings in my mind. But a big win, a upset for Arizona in the end as they take down Baylor 81-70. So a big stretch of college basketball, huge game tonight as Kansas takes on Iowa State, and that one at Hilton Coliseum in Ames, Iowa. So that's going to be a great game. Make sure you tune into that one. Number 2, Iowa State hosting number 9, Kansas. And Kansas trying to grab a huge top 3 win on the road at Hilton Coliseum. But Iowa State's a wagon of a team, only 1 loss on the season. That one came to Auburn in Maui, and it proves Iowa State really near the top of this group and one of the toughest teams to play against in all of college basketball. So tune into all of those games, and obviously more college basketball talk on the horizon each and every episode. So stay tuned as the season goes on in college basketball. But that'll do it for episode 40 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamud. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Friday.